Awesome. Well, I know we've got everybody coming in, so we'll give them a few minutes to trickle in here. I think this will be a great presentation. I'm very excited. And look at the numbers climbing. People are piling in for this one. So this is great. I know we had a lot of people register. So they're still joining. Yep. So we've got 40 people in here now. Let's see. And they're still coming. So we'll give them just a few moments to get in. So I'll just cover just a little bit of housekeeping before the introduction. For those who, trouble hearing me. Can you hear me, Marty?
Yes, I can.
Hey, Cesar, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Huh.
So whoever that is, log out of Zoom and maybe log back in.
Sherry and Nikki say my voice is coming through softly. Does it, if I come a little closer to the screen, maybe? Does that help, Nikki, Sherry? A bit. Huh. Okay. Okay, so I'm just gonna talk louder and hopefully you can hear me. Let me turn this up.
Yeah, it's good.
So
Good.
okay, perfect, awesome. It was a volume thing. So a little bit of housekeeping. Please, you are welcome to put any questions that you have into the chat or the Q&A, and we will get those answered at the end. And also wanted to remind anybody who's going to the NASM conference next week that Marty will be there. I will be there representing Maxsold, and I would love to connect with all of you guys who are going. We're going to be raffling off an iPad, so definitely stop by table 320 in the exhibitor hall and book 15 minutes to connect with me. I would love to talk to you and learn about your businesses. That being said, I want to introduce Marty Stevens-Hebner this evening from Clear Home Solutions. She will be presenting on the topic of Bullseye marketing, creative strategies to drive engagement and revenue. Take it away, Marty.
Thank you so much. And can I just say, as the president of NASM, the National Association of Seniors and Specialty Move Management, which is why we just call it NASM, I want to just thank Maxsold because you're always so supportive of our industry. And we at a personal level with Clear Home Solutions, we just love working with you. Just such a great platform. So hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming and being curious about Bullseye marketing. And my whole goal here is to really discuss hang on, I'm just going to minimize a window so I don't see too much. There we go. So I can read everything. There we go. Just cover some marketing strategies that you may not have thought of, and also some tools you may want to consider using, and just really going in depth on how to speak to your ideal client and also how to be unique in the marketplace. It's more important these days than ever. Okay, getting my computer to cooperate. Okay, what is a bullseye market? What is bullseye marketing? There we go. Okay, hang on. There we go. So I'm sorry. I swear it will all even out. So bullseye, what is it? Well, we have a big problem, and it's called the inundation problem. We are all inundated with too much information, too much work, too much marketing, and the same jargon frequently over and over and over again. It's just too much. And so that's where I came up with the idea of bullseye marketing to overcome this inundation problem. And so what is it exactly? Well, I actually first got the idea for this years ago. I've been an entrepreneur for over 20 years. And it was some article that was talking about marketing, and it mentioned Volvo. And at least then, I don't know if they still do it this way, but back then they really narrowed down who their very specific ideal client was. It was, I remember some of it was a woman who was living, who had at least a couple of kids, who was married, who had their own home, who lived in the suburbs, and it went on and on and on. So it's very, very specific. And we'll talk about specificity and how important that is. Target marketing is good, but for those of us who watched the Olympics and maybe saw the archery competition, the target is much bigger than, the whole world, but it's so much better to hit the bullseye than just thinking of a target. And it's really using bullseye marketing. It's a specific and it's a very refined way of standing out from a world of competing voices, products, everything. And I know you all know what I'm talking about. All right. So how do you figure this out? Really get to your bullseye. There is a wonderful thing called the value proposition canvas. And it is so useful. You can go online. I actually downloaded this free from Strategizer. I think Microsoft Word also has its own template. They're very easy to find. So let's take a good look at these. So you'll see there's both sides. This is really where your client is coming from. It's your ideal client profile. What you want to think about them. And I usually, when I'm starting with this, excuse me, I'll think of how are they in pain? What's the pain point? We all know what a pain point is. So in this case, when you're working with Max Sold, obviously one of the pain points is if your ideal client has a whole bunch of stuff in their house that they want to let go of, to give a second life, hopefully make money from. That's why they're coming to Max Sold, to make money from it. And they want someone to help them because they don't want to have to do an estate sale on their own. We know how miserable that can be. So that's a very specific pain. Now, usually there are other very specific things going on. And this is why you really want to take time to listen to each potential client. So for example, since we're move managers and working with older adults and their families at Clear Home Solutions, frequently there's some sort of grieving going on. Frequently sometimes someone's passed and we need to do an estate liquidation, and part of that is selling items. And so the people we're working with, frequently the adult children, they're going through the pain of grief and uncertainty and so many other pains that are very difficult for them to work with. They're very overwhelmed. It might be that one of your kids, somebody's kid, graduated from college and will be moving back home for a little bit. So they want to get rid of as much stuff as possible to make room for that adult child. And then what you want to think about, okay, so those are pains that we know go along, pardon me, with someone who wants to consider using Max Sold and consider using our services as partners with Max Sold. So now we get to like the ideal client profile. What are the customer's jobs? Not what are their careers, not what are they getting paid for, but what are the jobs they don't want to do that create this pain, that go along with these pains they're feeling. What they're doing is they don't want to be the estate sale setter-upper. They don't want to have to run the estate sale. They don't want to have to organize it. They want a system in place. And so when you think about it, when you're dealing with the customer jobs, another thing might be if someone has passed, for example, you're dealing with the executor who isn't just dealing with the stuff that they want to let go of. The executor is overseeing every aspect of the estate. And I'll tell you, with being an executor, basically the person you're the executor for passes and you become CEO of the state all of a sudden, and you usually have HR problems. So there are a lot of jobs an executor has to deal with. There are a lot of things parents have to deal with. And it's not just coping with the stuff that they need to let go of. The kids coming home from college, you're worrying about them, all of that. So thinking of all of that, and who has to deal with that? Frequently, it's mom, or in the case of someone passing, it's often the adult daughter who has to deal with it. And think about what age she's in. What age is she? Again, the ideal client profile. Who gets on board with you easily? That's what you want to focus on. And don't worry about, well, other segments won't get it. They will if you're specific, because for example, with senior move management, I've had plenty of people say, oh, you work with seniors. Do you work with people in their 30s? Because I know someone who's moving. Absolutely. But they get what you do. And then with the gains, by hiring you, what does the client hope to gain from that? They're hoping to gain money by selling things on Max Sold. They want it to be really easy. That's why they hire you as a partner or hire Max Sold directly. So think of all those gains, make a detailed list, because yes, things come to mind. This is something you want to take your time working on, because then on the other side of the value proposition canvas, or VPC, as you'll hear it referred to, then it's basically a mirror image. So you have the customer jobs, the gains on the top, the pains. So what are the pain relievers? What are the gain creators? Well, for example, pain reliever is that you're going to do everything for them. They've got too much to do already. They have a full-time job, etc. You're going to come in and make it all magic for them. With the gain creators, well, the creators they're going to have an auction, and hopefully makes it. I always say hopefully, that's because I'm thinking of so many other situations like eBay or whatever. But with Max Sold, they will make money from it and get things cleared out of the home very easily. So there's that. And that's such a relief. And then what products and services that you offer create those gain creators? Well, we know Max Sold auctions. That's the service. It makes such a difference. And then also in terms of if you're a professional organizer, a senior move manager, you go and you can organize everything. And then and after the auction, of course, clear things out for them. So there's such a tremendous value in this. So use this value proposition canvas. It's amazing. Now, I have 3 code words that I need to give you during the presentation. Get ready. Here is the first code word. The first code word is audience. Doesn't matter if it's upper or lower case, it's audience. AUDIENCE. Audience, first code word. Moving on. All right. So one of the things filling out the VPC, the value proposition canvas, helps with is knowing who you're conversing with. And it needs to be a conversation. You're not talking to someone or at someone. You want to have a conversation with them, even if you're not in the room with them. You want it to sound like a conversation when you're marketing to them, so they feel comfortable and more at ease. And they can tell when you're trying to sell. I think we all have, I call it the BS meter. We're so tuned into it. It's the language, it's the tone of voice, it's the look in the eye if you're in person, but especially what's being written. Better to be yourself and listen than to use marketing language. I was talking to somebody last night who's a financial advisor. Basically, honestly, as a senior move manager, he does the same thing that I did when I was the one answering the phone. I've been doing this for 11 years, so a while ago. But I found the best thing to say to a potential client calling was to just say, oh, hello, what's going on? And they were so relieved to have someone who actually wanted to listen to what's going on and who they can just kind of vent to, because it's so difficult. And at the same time, I'm happy to listen. I think all of us are. And that's why we're in these professions that we're in. At the same time, the client is actually giving me information about what their pain points are specifically right now. And so I can talk to them about the specific services we offer, like estate liquidation that includes Max Sold. So they're giving me the information and I'm understanding their circumstances so I can speak specifically to what they need. Here's a great example of bad marketing language. I don't know about the rest of you, but I hate staring at a blank page. So I frequently use ChatGPT just to, give me a little jump start. I end up adjusting everything, including this particular PowerPoint, but at least it's not a blank page. Here's an example of something they wanted to, that ChatGPT included in the outline that it gave me. Are you ready to take your business to the next level? How many times have we seen that? So you won't see that anywhere in here except as a bad example like that. But things like that, be more unique, be more conversant. When everybody else is yelling slogans at people, just be that quieter person who gets them and understands them, especially when you are meeting with people one-on-one. And I would go with referral sources as well, because I know for us estate planning attorneys, obviously realtors and others are great referral sources. So it's the same kind of thing. Listen to what they need and speak to what they need and their pains and the gains that you can provide the products. Also, specificity really works. This is tangential, but I think you'll get the idea from this. So many years ago, Toni Morrison, the author who's brilliant, was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in literature. And the committee that awarded it to her said in their announcement that she wrote universally and appealed to and yes, she does appeal to everybody, but she doesn't write universally. For example, in her book Beloved, that is extraordinary, it takes place during Reconstruction after the Civil War in the South. And for example, I remember one scene to this day, I remember it vividly. It was a group of men, African-American men, on a chain gang. So you can imagine what that was like. And then, and they get caught in a flood and they're being swept away. And she was so specific in how she described it. I swear I could taste the mud these men were having to contend with, like, in their faces. So really it's specificity, because then people really see the picture and then they get a sense really of what you do and how you can help them or people they know. So specificity is really helpful. Oh, I already did that. Sorry, I went backwards. There we go. Now, one of the things that can be very helpful in terms of marketing, and I know we've all heard about podcasting. I mean, there's so many podcasts out there now, and actually mine is on hiatus because I'm launching another venture, but I love doing it. But why do it, right? Well, for one thing, because I know you're all thinking too, what, you want me to build something else, a podcast? Well, there's really no better way to find and strengthen your unique voice, both as a company and the person leading that company, but also as an expert in general. So it's really great. It connects you directly to people who are curious about what you're speaking to. It really enhances your visibility. Oh. It showcases your expertise and builds your credibility. And so you need to think about what expertise you could offer. And plus you can repurpose and reuse all of the information from your podcast in a bunch of different ways. Just think about it too. Your average podcaster can reach a global audience in an inexpensive way because you're out there on the internet. It's amazing. Well, I interviewed somebody from New Zealand, so I have followers from New Zealand. I've been surprised how many different countries where I have followers from. So How to Move Your Mom and Still Be on Speaking Terms Afterward was my podcast. Or it is, like I say, it's on hiatus. But I enjoy doing this so much. And it doesn't have to be perfect when you start out. We're all going to bobble. Like, I'm not speaking perfectly through this entire conversation. There's some I stop mid-sentence and start another one. So it doesn't have to be perfect because that's conversational. So I started actually in the beginning of the pandemic because suddenly I had all the time in the world on my hands. And so I thought, well, I better do something I've been wanting to do. And so I started my podcast. I had no clue what I was doing because actually I was not a big podcast listener. I'm more of one now. I also had access to an extraordinary number of experts. I live in Los Angeles and I'm a member of a very large networking group of about 6,000 people here in LA called Provisors. There's all kinds of attorneys, senior service related professionals who I could call on for interviews. They were wonderful. And also what was great is I was interviewing my referral sources. And that was wonderful because we got to know each other better. I know they appreciated being on the podcast. So that came in very handy. A good idea to do is to talk to your guest ahead of time about the list of questions, because then you spend less time editing, which was an issue for me. So this is a trick I learned so that it can go very smoothly with minimal editing. And above all, as I was saying earlier, don't be afraid to screw up. Everybody does. And frankly, people love it when you're human. They love that because they can relate to you more. So what you can do with this, suddenly you have a wealth of content when you have a single episode of a podcast. So the idea is to repurpose. And there are very efficient ways to do it. You want to do it across all social media platforms. And for example, a podcast episode can be transcribed into a blog post. I use a program called Descript, like the word description, but without the ION at the end. It will automatically transcribe your podcast for you. You can edit, it's an editing platform. It will also break it into some snippets automatically. I'll use AI. It's not perfect. No program is going to be perfect. No program is. But again, it's like ChatGPT. It gives you more than a jump start. You can repurpose it, correct a few things in the transcription, and you're good to go for a blog. You can also, and Descript, and there are other programs for this too, where it will break it into snippets for social media. So if you do audio and video for your podcast, which I encourage you to do, because then you have video and audio and the written word from the transcription, you can break all that into little snippets for social media and repurpose them, stuff you put on Facebook, for lack of a better idea, put it on Facebook a year ago, do it again. I promise you, no one remembers except you. Also, newsletters can be compiled from blog posts and turned into articles that you can submit somewhere. So all these things you can do, it's so efficient. And just, remember though, with each social media platform, you want to tweak it a little bit to make it really fit the audience for that platform. Something with Facebook needs to be tweaked a little bit at least for LinkedIn because you're speaking to professionals. So just bear that in mind. And with the podcast, blog, etc., that you generate from that, you can even turn them into presentations. For example, you could invite one of the referral sources, an estate planning attorney, for example, who you interviewed, ask them if they want to do a presentation with you. It's a great idea. And with presentations, you are really leading the conversation. This is a genuine conversation in person with real-time feedback from your audience. Even though for most of it, like with my situation here right now, I'm doing the lion's share of the talking. However, I can already see some questions and there's things in the chat. So you're going to give me the real-time feedback. And then if it's in person, you end up talking to people afterwards. It's very, very helpful to really discern what resonated with them. And also, and they'll compliment you, but also if somebody, especially if they're a kind person, but they come up and they say, one thing I noticed, and they give you a constructive criticism, take it to heart, because that takes courage for someone, again, a really nice, decent person to come up and say that to you and sit with it a bit. None of us like to have to change things or love criticism, but it can be very useful. So listen intently. There's so much valuable information that you have to share. Frequently, I do presentations about downsizing, decluttering for a move, things like that. But I have this presentation and I have a number of others that can be for more general audiences in terms of building businesses and things. I think it was last year that for Maxsoul, like on these webinars, I was very honored to do a webinar then. And it was about challenging clients. Well, that can be used and adapted for any industry. Same thing with this. So you have so much valuable information to share. And I want to point out too, there is a wonderful CCRC continuing care retirement community here in Pasadena called Villa Gardens. It's a beautiful place. They get a lot of retirees from Jet Propulsion Laboratory which works with NASA. And it's amazing from those the presentations I've done in the past, months and even years later, they come back and want to hire us because they heard that presentation. You just never know. You're building a long-term pipeline that way. And also keep in mind, people connect with real stories and often they may have another story that they can share with you. Always helpful because presentations aren't just marketing. They're really memorable experiences. And they sometimes generate word of mouth referrals. That's definitely happened where, my neighbor saw your presentation. I am I need to do an estate sale. I would love to talk to you about that. You just never know. And especially if you're in person, this is where you're going to meet potential clients and referral sources. And if it's in person, don't be afraid to draw close. And I love to go out into the audience because some people do it to like make sure everybody's paying attention. I don't do that. I want to get closer to people and really see in their eyes, first of all, if they're paying attention, if they're bored. And people appreciate it too, because again, you're taking that initiative to get closer to them. They get that you want it to be very personal and very human, and that you want to connect. It makes such a difference. And just so you know, you can be shy and still be a great speaker. Being nervous is normal. I look at it now, like before this presentation, I had the usual butterflies. That's normal. I use the energy from that. And I also know that that's normal for me, and that it's really about getting the energy and also the alertness for the presentation. So with shy, I actually saw somebody who was very shy last fall kick it out of the ballpark with a presentation. She was her quieter self and was not embarrassed by that, and she knocked it out of the park. Like I say, this is where you're speaking directly to your bullseye market, and you're getting live feedback. And you also, when you're shy and nervous, remember, you know the material already. If you don't rehearse ahead of time, especially if you're new to speaking, anybody should rehearse ahead of time, but just set aside some hours, especially the day before or 2 days before and 2 days before, and just go through it a number of times. Doesn't have to be perfect. It won't be perfect. But this way you get more confident, especially with the PowerPoint like this. I mean, one of my tricks, they say to just use images and talk yourself. I don't. I put all the information on the slides, so I don't have to worry about tripping up on something or missing a key point. It's right there. Oops, there we go. And the best thing you can do as a speaker is just be you. I want to emphasize how important it is to just be yourself, because that is what sets you apart and will make you unique, because you are the only you that is out there. And to show them who you are as a person, tell your own stories, show your vulnerability. I remember one time, this is when I was a grad student at UCLA, and I was speaking in front of a whole room full of people. And I was nervous because I wasn't used to speaking in front of a large room of people. And so my voice went higher, and it started to quaver in the back of my throat. This is like what I was sounding like. And I just said, oh I'm really nervous. And so I let that out, and I just kept talking, and my voice settled down because I acknowledged it. I didn't fight it. I acknowledged it. And also everybody in the room could relate. And yeah, I get nervous too. I get that. And I got that idea actually when Robert De Niro won an Oscar, because he said that during his acceptance speech, and he did settle down. I thought, let me try this. And it worked. It was great. So yeah, just be human. And, don't forget too, that you can also, the presentations you have, you can turn that into a podcast as well, or a seminar. So there are all these different ways to reuse the information. All right. So another way that's really important with marketing is to make yourself a valuable resource by offering other valuable resources. These resources that you present, including your own personal knowledge or connections, that you become everybody sees that you are an expert, and you build trust with the audience. So let's talk about some of this. One of the ways when you're preparing to do this, like an ebook or a webinar, is doing it as a presentation. And this is another reason to really go into the audience and really observe what they're responding to. What's resonating with them? Is it tips that you give? Do you do behind the scenes photos? Are those getting a lot of likes on Facebook or other social media? Client success stories. So that can be great on social media. And also don't forget that the human brain is designed to remember stories. From going back to the tales that got told or maybe grunted around those campfires in the caves and out in the savannah. That's how we remember things, the beginning, the middle, and the end. So success stories are great. You can tell them, like, for example, you can list the services that you do, but then you can also, well, for example, I worked with Samantha. She, she was moving to assisted living and she needed to get rid of everything. She had the things she was moving with, but there was all these other possessions in the home that had to be dealt with. And then talking through the process and how it worked so well for her, maybe a cool thing that was sold that got a lot of money, or that she was so happy to be rid of, that kind of thing. So yeah, really listen to your audience and pay attention. Also, on your website, you can include a link to something, whether it's a presentation or a webinar. It can be the ebook. You could do a guide to downsizing for seniors. We all have those tips. But again, make them your own. You can include a client example because, again, that's more unique. It'll take you a little more time to put together, but it will resonate more because we all have our organizing tips. And I think just about most organizers' websites and managers' websites have, top 10 tips for organizing, maybe organizing a kitchen, organizing for a move. What will make yours unique? It's the client stories, and also the way the voice of how you put the book together. This is why you don't want to rely on ChatGPT. Maybe like me for a jump start, but get in there and really make it your own. It's amazing what you can do. Checklists, the essential steps for a stress-free move, very helpful. That could be a timeline or something like that. That's not out there as much. There are a couple of articles I've seen, but not a lot. And then also put together a webinar. You don't even have to present it anywhere. It could be very short, just 5 or 10 slides that explain how to declutter and organize effectively, how to hold a max sold auction, the different steps to it, the timeline, all of that, so they know. All kinds of things you can offer. And think beyond only referring clients, those who refer clients to you, and also people you refer clients to. I often introduce potential referral sources to one another. For example, if I have an estate planning attorney, they should also be acquainted with a home care company. And so the thing is, by introducing them, they can feed each other more consistently with clients. And so I find that works very well. And also when I approach a referral source to meet with them, or a potential referral source, when I'm emailing them or leaving a voicemail message, what I don't say, I'd love to find out, you can refer clients to me. Let's find out. It's better to do it just like with your potential clients. Think of these people as potential clients because they'll be sending you their people on hopefully a regular basis, so long as it works out for you. What I will say in the email or voicemail is that I want to find out what referral sources are best for you. Excuse me, and what your ideal client looks like. And I just leave, and then I'd love to meet with you, etc. And inevitably they want to meet. And inevitably too, they ask what I do. What are my referral sources? What, how can they help me? It's a very good way to do it. Excuse me. Sorry for coughing in your ear. Another great way to market is to co-market with someone else. I had so much fun co-marketing with, and she's now in Austin, not Los Angeles, so I don't do it anymore, but co-marketing with my dear friend, Courtney Hoganson, who is a registered nurse. She had a home care company, and now she's an established expert and speaker, and she has a wonderful new business called Call Light, and it's where individuals can go and actually schedule a nurse to come by the house if they need a shot or some other medical procedure done that a nurse can handle. So she's brilliant. We had so much fun because I was doing, obviously senior move management. She was doing home care. We would go to all these communities. We had so much more fun doing it that way because it's easier to brag about somebody else than yourself. So she and I would brag for one another. Also, it splits it up. So it's not like a one-on-one. It's 3 people. So it makes it easier for the conversation to kind of go around the small circle you've created. It's a lot of fun. And you kind of become a packaged resource. So they think of both of you, both of you, instead of just having to remember who was that move manager who was here. It's easier for them to remember, I think. Now let's talk about events, sponsoring and creating them. One of the things I really want to advise you about, because events can be great, but you need to be careful, because if you start exhibiting at a lot of different events, that's a lot of money out the door. So you really have to track what kind of ROI, return on investment, you're getting from those. I noticed early on, there was not a big return on investment, even when I had a sign-up sheet, because people wouldn't sign up for I'd only get a few signups for each time I exhibited. So that was not very helpful. The same goes with direct mail. You really have to watch where you're putting your marketing dollars. You want to look where what you're saying is resonating most and where you're getting the most response. It's having that conversation. Where do you have people answering back, asking you questions, liking a post or something like that? So just be aware of that. Be careful. You can try it with smaller events. That's what I did to determine if it's worth the investment. It might be really worth it in your area. Here in Los Angeles, there are so many different events. I mean, it's ridiculous. And again, here it's not a great investment because it's just too big a market. But if you're in a smaller market, it could really be worthwhile. And again, that's something you could do alongside another company. That's very possible. What I will tell you about these events is do attend them, because then you can network and meet other, sometimes potential clients, but also other professionals to get to know. So not only do you have those referral sources back and forth, but also when your client needs an estate planning attorney or they need a home care company, you know who to call. It's very helpful. And I just find, especially when you're working with older adults, those with special needs and their families, it's a special kind of person. We all tend to be a very friendly crowd, even when we're quote unquote competitors. And I mentioned direct mail, just in terms of being careful with your money. Again, in LA, we get so much junk mail and people really don't save it. So again, and it's an expensive market. So that's another thing here. With my company, I have noticed it's not worth investing in. However, in other markets, it may be. So it's just about being really smart about where you're putting your marketing dollars, and also try it in a small way first and see and track the return on investment. Just being careful there. But those can be very fun. They're certainly fun to attend. And certainly when it's an event like a webinar or something, especially if it's on, a webinar is online. Those aren't as expensive to put together, but they do take some time. And you want to make sure you have a strong emailing list before you attempt to do something like that. Or if you're lucky, Max Sold asks you to do a webinar. So there you go. Marketing essentials. I think this is kind of a gimme for most of you, most if not all of you attending, but I do want to cover this. It's very important to have, in terms of your voice, you want that to be consistent across platforms. It's the same thing visually. Just ask anybody who's had to rebrand. That is so hard to do. So really start thinking about, what do you want to convey? What do you want to convey to your potential clients and the market at large? How do you want them to see it? You want to keep, like I say, consistent across all platforms. That includes those banners that you see on social media. And again, this consistency builds trust and recognition, because they'll say, oh, I know that company because they saw your logo before, or they saw the color scheme before, and they recognize it. So here are some great tools. Did I forget to give, I forgot to give the second code word. I just realized. Okay, second code word, before I forget, second code word is value. V-A-L-U-E. Upper or lowercase doesn't matter. Value. V-A-L-U-E. All right. So logo and color palette apps. There are a bunch of them out there. They're very fun to play with. I have definitely gone down the rabbit hole a few times with these. So I think one of the ones that many of us have heard of is Canva. Canva is great for all sorts of things. They can help you make all kinds of marketing materials and collaterals. They have a logo maker, which I think you can kind of ask them to, give you some ideas for it. It's very helpful. Also with color palettes, they'll give you examples. So that can be very helpful. And they do have, I believe, a free version. And I think the professional version isn't that costly. There are also free logo makers and creators like Looka. I think I use this for my new company called AgeWise Alliance. And what I did was it would generate a bunch of different photos. I gave them, it asks you about, what your company name is, what's your target market, and then it spews out a bunch. And so I didn't find one that I liked, but I found a few that had kind of a nice symbol that I liked, a nice font, some of the colors. And I actually have a great graphic artist that I work with. But again, you get ideas. You're not starting from the blank page, and you got enough to do already. And then this is one of my favorite ones. It's Coolor. Oh, it's spelled wrong. I'm so sorry. Look up in the upper left-hand corner of the photo. It's Coolors. I will correct this before it gets sent out. Coolors, Coolors, like colors, but with 2 O's at the top. And you can just play all day with color palettes. You need to figure out how to use it. It's not that difficult. And once you get going, you don't want to stop. It's amazing. It's so much fun to build your color palette this way. Very helpful tool. Very, very helpful. So I highly recommend those platforms. There are others out there too. These are just the ones that I happen to like and work with and I can vouch for. All right, so let's talk about, because we're coming up on 45 minutes pretty quickly. So here are some final thoughts. You want to build relationships by having conversations that add value to people's lives, rather than just selling. Remember, I told you about when people would call Clear Home Solutions, and all I had to say was, what's going on? And they would just start talking. And I could learn so much about them. And also I could really sympathize with them. So it wasn't anything phony at all. So really have those conversations. And again, you really, even when it's online, on social media or through newsletters, you are building a relationship with them so that you become that trusted resource for information and assistance. It's extraordinary what can happen when you really focus on that. Don't be afraid to make mistakes or have to adjust. It's like, oh, that voice isn't working or that color scheme isn't working, especially if it's early on. You can also do it after you've been in business a few years and rebrand. That is costly. It takes a lot of time, but it might be worth it if you're getting complaints or if it doesn't really speak to people anymore. But the thing is, clients appreciate honesty and transparency. So you can say, we're kind of done with our old logo. So we're going to bring out another one, or another thing you can do is offer, on social media, offer 3 different versions of the logo, have people vote on it. That gets them involved. It gets to them to kind of buy into what you're doing. It's definitely worthwhile. Also, be unique just by being you. It's so important. If you have an interesting craft or hobby that could be completely unrelated to doing a max sold auction. But the thing is, let's say you knit, or better yet, you create these really elaborate dolls. Well, if there are going to be some antique dolls or collectible dolls in a max sold auction, you can say, hey, look what I did. Okay, maybe it's not as collectible as this one, but I had a really good time doing that. It just tells people more about who you are. You're letting them get a peek behind the curtain, and they will get you that much more. They could hate arts and crafts, but they will get who you are because you are truly being yourself. Another important thing is to remember the market doesn't stay still. It's kind of like a business plan. When somebody comes to me and says, oh, I finished my business plan, finally, I have to suppress a giggle because it's never done. You're always tweaking it year over year. It's a good thing to revisit that. Same thing with marketing. Annually, you should review the channels you've been using, the different, whether it's social media, maybe we don't, for example, Clear Home Solutions, we don't post on all social media. We post on Facebook because that's where our target market, the adult child generally, and also people who are older tend to be on Facebook. So that's great for potential clients. We post on LinkedIn, great for referral sources and establishing Clear Home Solutions and myself as an expert. And we do Instagram too, because it's lovely to show those before and after shots. So we tried X, formerly known as Twitter. for the first year or two, it just wasn't our platform. So again, it's always evolving. Keep adapting and learning and being really, really curious. So right now, I want to give you your third code word, which I meant to give you. Well, anyway, you're getting all of them. So the third code word is repurpose. That's something I really want you to take away from this presentation, is that you should repurpose your content. So you're not doing a podcast, but you're doing presentations. Repurpose that, and just record yourself on Zoom or something like that, doing your presentation. And again, that's something you can share with people. Break it up into snippets, etc. Repurpose. Don't redo it time after time time after time. You have enough to do already. You have enough to do, especially if it's your own business. You know this. So yeah, make it easy. And also, people want those tips. And it's good to reiterate it wherever you can, because the more people see it, the more they'll remember it, and the more they'll remember you. All right.
There is a request to share the 3 code words again. There were
Okay, I can do that.
Glitchy computers issues.
Oh, I hear that. We've all been there, right? We've all been there. And sometimes I've been there in the middle of a presentation. Fortunately, that did not happen this time. But so I'll repeat them after this slide. Seth Godin is considered a marketing guru, and he is somebody who really built up his business by just being his brilliant and somewhat quirky self. He's had best-selling books. He's worked with presidential campaigns. He's just a guy. It turns out his father and my father worked together in Buffalo decades ago. It was kind of a crazy thing, but he is brilliant. And here we go. Standing out is a long-term strategy. So you're not going to get results immediately, although if you do, yay for you. But it's a long-term strategy that takes guts. It takes courage to be yourself out there in public and to produce results. It will take a little time, so be patient. In a busy marketplace, not standing out is the same as being invisible. How can you stand out? Be your very unique self. So allow me to repeat those, the code words. So the first code word was audience. You are my audience for this webinar, AUDIENCE. The second code word was value, VALUE, value. I hope I'm providing value to this webinar. And then third code word was repurpose. Repurpose, like with my own podcast, we repurpose it in all kinds of ways. Repurpose, REPURPOSE, repurpose. And again, upper lowercase doesn't matter. So thank you so much for attending. What questions do we have out there, Heather?
There is a question to share the podcast editing platform again.
Descript. Let me put in the chat. Bear with me for a second. Okay, I think this is, yeah, I have 3 monitors going here. So let me look it up so I can put like a live link in the chat just by looking it up. It's very helpful. All right, I discovered this just before I was about to start doing my podcast, and I've used it ever since. There we go, descript.com. It's very good. And they've grown it in a very smart way and added bells and whistles in a very smart way, because you know how some companies just really overdo it, but they are very good. They're exceptional.
Awesome.
Other questions? Yeah, any others?
Just curious, how many organizers and move managers do you know have podcasts out there? Because every now and then I don't know if you've heard of many, but I hear like somebody just put in the chat here earlier that she has one. I'm trying to find who it was.
Good. That's great. You have a lot of material to work with. That's fantastic. Here, let me stop sharing so we can converse. Hello.
I was wondering if it would be like a virtual meetup group for move manager and organizer podcasters.
Yeah, that would be great. Yes, we love it. Oh, hi, Jamie. Oh, that's great. I'm glad you're doing that. You're creating one as well. There
Looks
cannot
like we
be,
have, sorry, go ahead.
oops, sorry. Go ahead, Cesar.
Looks like we have some questions in the Q&A.
Oh, good.
Wonderful. Yeah, happy to answer whatever you got. And I may say, I don't know, but I will get back to you with an answer. If for some reason I don't know yet.
I know.
Um,
I'm curious. But so Joy wants to know, what is the best way to get it out there? If you start your podcast, how do you launch it?
well, just start by letting people on social media know. Again, grow it slowly. For one thing, your first couple of podcasts, you're going to be figuring it out. So you may not want to make an audience. So just to work the kinks out. But then, yeah, it's about being consistent. Like, I didn't like having to put the podcast on hold, but I had to. And then actually in December, I broke basically the left side of my body. So for 3.5 months, I couldn't do anything anyway. But be consistent. If you say you're going to do it once a week, then do it once a week. I recommend starting, again, if you're a business owner, make it once a month. Be kind to yourself, because as Seth Godin said, it takes time and patience to really build things up and find that niche that is just for you and where people really get you. Also, ask to guest on other people's podcasts. So that can be a very wonderful thing for you, for your podcast, and just your marketing in general, and really showing who you are. And then if you get to the point where you want to, and again, be careful with the investment, make sure there's a strong ROI, is Google Ads, digital or advertising, that sort of thing. So you can try doing that. And then using your newsletter to let people know your newsletter list. You can also purchase, there are places where you can purchase people's email addresses and things. Be careful with that. Really have been doing it a long time, because you don't want to end up on spam lists. That's a really important thing. So I hope that's helpful. Like anything else, it's marketing. To get your podcast really known, especially if you want to try to make money from it. I wouldn't start thinking of it that way. For me, it definitely built revenue, but it was because of the referral sources I was interviewing. We did get some jobs out of it, amazingly, but not initially. So really think about it as presenting yourself as an expert, and also just to have all that great content for all kinds of social media. It's so helpful. And you can sound like an expert. And like I say, get to know these other referral sources and other people.
So the preferred platform, was that website, Descript.com, or is it a different one?
Yes. Yeah, that's the one where I go in, I load up, because I usually record them on Zoom. I'll download the MP4. I will put it into Descript. It'll take a few minutes, but it'll pop out a transcription. And the cool thing this is one of the things I love about Descript. Not only can you edit from, the timeline of the video and the audio, you can edit using the transcript. So believe me, I have moved paragraphs around, and it'll automatically, like if you highlight the paragraph and want to move it elsewhere, you can just do that, and it will happen in the video and audio as well. That's way back when what sold me on it initially. And then now they have all kinds of other bells and whistles too, which is great and make a lot of sense. That's one, it was great. So like I say, I'm a big Descript fan, and there are other platforms out there. People's brains, I think we all know this, because you do some sort of organizing one way or the other, depending on what profession or what services we offer. But everybody's brain is different. So I encourage you to look at other examples too, just to make sure, just to find the one where the way it operates is really intuitive for you, really works for you.
Awesome. And Bobby Joe wants to know, is the equipment expensive? What do you need to
Is that Bobby Joe Kinsey?
Yes.
I bet it is. Hello. No, she's wonderful. She's a friend. We started out, I was a consultant for her, and I just love Bobby Joe. She's brilliant. And like I say, she's a great friend now. So thank you for asking a question. I would recommend not making a big investment. Get a good microphone so it sounds good. I would invest in a Zoom account so you don't have just 40 minutes. sometimes it's really good. I wouldn't recommend going live, at least not immediately, because again, those first several episodes, you're getting used to it. If you're really used to speaking publicly and also being a panelist, like a moderator, you might be able to do that, but otherwise, I really recommend pre-recording your first few to several episodes. I like to pre-record just so I can edit and really make it perfect. That's, well, it's never perfect, but like, really well done. So those are my ideas, but get yourself a good microphone, invest in a Zoom subscription, and also find an editing platform that you like and get a paid version of it. I found frequently it's the lowest paid version that I need, sometimes higher, but it just depends, especially if you're just starting out. Having your computer or laptop, a good mic, Zoom, and then some sort of editing that you can do is just really helpful. And maybe, you'll want a logo for your podcast. So you can use a logo maker, Canva, Coolors, those sites I recommended, and others.
Awesome.
What else you got?
Nicola wants to know, how do you come up, so not podcasting now, personal presentations. How do you come up with the actual content or topics for an in-person presentation?
Because this is one I could easily give in person too, and I intend to. Anyway, because it's a great topic. And I love talking about that bullseye. Remember that bullseye. So putting a presentation together. Again, the presentation itself is a story. So make sure you have a beginning. And that's frequently when you might ask questions. Like I start off with, what is bullseye marketing? Because I figured you were probably curious about that as an audience member. And just slowly say, okay, this is what we're going to talk about. This is kind of like basically a brief, subject sentence, like when you're writing a paper or something like that. And then in the middle, just make sure you don't, build on each slide to build and continue the story, but provide fresh information. And then at the end, make sure to bring it together, kind of summarize what you've spoken about, hit a couple of key points. And it depends on, and then if you're thinking, so that's something to bear in mind. It has to have a good structure. It's important. Now, in terms of content, think of the things that you know well. I mean, my first presentations were about downsizing and moving, and also just introducing the company, because I would do things at realtors' offices. But then once you have some experience under your belt, or maybe you've started this business that you're doing now, and you have a lot of experience in other businesses, for example, marketing, or like I did last year, challenging clients. I also have a presentation about fears on your side. Things that are for a broader audience also come in very handy, because then you can start speaking at chambers of commerce, at other conferences that might not have to do with Max Sold, or it may have to do with something entirely different. Like I'm just thinking off the top of my head, like a senior living association conference. Well, you can go there because you have the bona fides from working with older adults or people, estate liquidations and things like that with Max Sold. And so they can see how that knowledge would translate, that you have those bona fides on your resume, and that you have this great marketing webinar, something like that. I hope that helps you with that. I hope I answered your question thoroughly.
Okay, and Katya wanted to know which platform or medium has delivered the most actual clients to you.
It varies. But after 11 and a half years, it really varies. Because at this point, I have to be honest with you that we're really referral based. So by getting to know all those referral sources and being myself when I meet with them and helping them look good to their clients, and also sending them either potential clients or other referral sources, has really helped establishing myself as an expert through podcasting. All those things have built. It's like what Seth Godin says, you start out and be patient and keep at it. And again, be yourself, be consistent. It takes a little bit of time. So, yes, these so-called unicorns out there that are suddenly worth $1 billion, they took years to form. I promise you. We use Slack for team communication, which is wonderful. And Slack, the founders actually started out with an entirely different business that was a failure. However, they had built this communication system that they used internally. And people said, you should sell that. And that became Slack, which is a unicorn, which became huge. But there were years of this development and trial and error. That's another thing, especially if you're starting out. Not everything's going to work. Oh, believe me, not everything's going to work. But in terms of the platforms, it's the consistency that matters. People have found us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Nextdoor, because somebody referred us. Instagram, I don't know about Instagram, but again, it doesn't hurt, especially because that can reinforce other people. You know, Facebook and Instagram are both owned by Meta. And so often Facebook people will also be on Instagram. So it's like, oh, there they are there too. Oh, this is cool. And so they'll check you out. It's just part of your marketing biome or ecosphere to have all of those. Again, the consistency, it builds trust that you're there. Oh, you're there too, and you're there too. And they remember you more that way. So it can be difficult to track this sort of thing, especially with social media. It's always been very difficult to track the ROI. You can use unique links and landing pages that can help. But yeah, and it just varies because, as I was saying at the end, the market keeps changing. So what worked 5 years ago, it changes, and now something else is working better. So just really adapt and be open to it, but above all, be yourself and be patient.
Yeah, be patient. On that note, this will be our last question, I believe, because we are at 7:02. But Nicola said, she asked, how do you stay consistent? It's hard to keep up with it all.
It is. As soon as you can afford to outsource, do it. You can use Fiverr, you can use, and that's where I found actually my amazing graphic artist, and also the person who puts together I do the full outlines for my presentation that I used to do all the visuals. I would go down such a rabbit hole. And so I found someone on Fiverr who does an amazing job. She's the one who did all those beautiful animations and really all of the visuals. She was just great. So when you can do that, you can hire a virtual assistant, a social media manager. A great place to find someone too is hiremymom.com. Hire My Mom. It's really great. It's a great resource. So you can find people, and you don't have to hire them for hours and hours a week. Just say, I could use you just to schedule the social media and maybe put it together using the podcast, again, repurposing, just like for 2 hours a month. You can start small. That's okay. But yeah, it is hard to do it all at once. And if you're just starting out, I would really focus on just getting out to where your potential clients are. I mean, when I was when I was a baby move manager, I went to local, we had their senior service related networking groups to start to get to know people. Start doing that first. And then you'll start collecting some email addresses, you'll start getting some clients, and then you start building your email list, and that helps. And then in terms of for newsletters, you want that list, and take your time getting into the full complement of this. You could start doing a podcast right away, but you might want to wait until you have at least a few clients under your belt. And if you've been doing this for a while, and certainly as long as I have, you have so many stories. And so what I invite you to do, and I do this all the time, pull up a Word document, click dictate, and just start telling the story. You'll have to clean it up quite a bit. Although, frankly, as I think about it, you could probably ask ChatGPT or one of the others. There's a number of others now. There's Claude.ai and others that can do this. Where you can just start doing that. And post that. People love the stories. Post some photos from on the job. I mean, that all the apps are on, yeah, they have apps for everything where you can just upload it. So yeah, I'm not trying to minimize what you're talking about because there is so much to do, so much to do. And unfortunately, no matter how long you're in business, there is so much to do. But like I say, I think in the beginning, focus on actually meeting people and referral sources. And then, start collecting the photos and the client stories and then start doing all of this. I hope that's helpful.
That was awesome. And this has been an amazing presentation. Thank you so much, Marty. And again,
Always an honor and pleasure. Thank you.
Everyone who's going to the National Association of Senior Move Manager Conference next week,
come to Chicago. Be with us. It's always such a great conference.
Guys, Maxwell will be raffling off an iPad, so come to table 320.
I'll be there.
Connect with you. I want to connect with everybody. Have a great night and thank you.